Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another PCM Hockey Podcast. Today, we're finally hitting into the double digits as we are at episode 10. And I'm once again joined by my buddy Calvin Hector and also Mark Jones. It's been a decent while. This is the first podcast of the month. We haven't done one since March because school and life has been pretty busy. COVID, a lot of things have been happening in this past couple of weeks of hockey, especially as well with COVID stoppages for the Canucks. And we also had the trade deadline just passed by us not too long ago as well. So let's get right into things. Kelvin, how's it going there, bud?
It's going all right. I'm just getting out of those the COVID-19 blues. Actually, I did test positive for COVID a couple weeks ago, so my quarantine just finished up not too long ago, and that's kind of one of the reasons I guess we haven't put a podcast
Yeah.
together since last month. Is I was out feeling a little bit sick. Thankfully, I got through it all healthy and fine. I don't feel too horrible after the whole thing. Just glad I didn't really spread it to anyone. And yeah, but besides that, I'm doing really well. School just finished and ready to talk some hockey.
Yeah, I'm ready to talk some hockey as well, and I'm glad to hear that you're feeling better, buddy. And Mark, how's it going down there?
Good. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm sorry to hear about Kelvin, and I mean it just shows reality too that this thing is real, and that's all I'm going to say on that. That's I'm don't get hating on me about whatever. I mean, I wish we were back to normal, but the fact of the matter is this is a real thing, and
Yeah.
I was able to get my shot. I don't know how it's working where you guys are, but they opened it up to anybody 18 plus. So no, I'm not 55 plus. So for what that's worth, nothing against anybody that is, but no, I didn't fit into that category. But they opened it to everybody 18 plus, and my understanding I did some questioning on that about, well, how does that work? And I guess it's because it's so small of a community that if any kind of outbreak happened here, it would be for layman's terms, a gong show, because there's
Yeah.
I guess the hospital is so small, whatever, they would be medevacing so many people out. So they just decided to do I guess anybody that wanted it. I guess they've been doing it. I think there's a few more days coming, but I got mine last Friday, and other than some pain in the arm, which is just the same as getting a flu shot, so far so good. So I just have to roll with it, and yeah, hopefully we can see brighter days coming ahead. But yeah, glad to be on, and yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, for that where Mark lives right now is where my hometown used to be. And it is a very, very small town. It has like 2,000, 3,000 people. It is a very small town. So if there is ever an outbreak, it would go pretty bad down there. So let's get in to talking some hockey. As I think we'll jump into the first thing, kind of the biggest news of today, of April 15th, was that the Oilers Canucks game for tomorrow and Friday is officially canceled or postponed, I guess, and will be put to a later date. Sadly, the Canucks are just still not feeling ready yet. I heard Quinn Hughes was going through a really bad strain of COVID. JT Miller came on like a media availability day and talked about how he feels like he's not ready. And then just the other day as well, I think there was an NHLPA meeting with the NHL and the Vancouver Canucks as well. They had a meeting and they decided to postpone the game. So I'm going to send this one over to Mark, the Canucks expert, to talk a little bit more about the whole COVID stuff there in Vancouver.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's a really sad situation. I mean, it's you hear bits and pieces of things, and from what I'm going with, which is I think very basic knowledge, other than they're saying it was somehow just innocently enough protocols were being handled or being observed, and it's out there in the community. Vancouver is a real hotbed in terms of the city of Vancouver and Vancouver area for cases, and apparently it was just through an innocent. Possibly through just a regular routine thing. You're doing your basic things, a store, or maybe it was going to somewhere, a restaurant or something, when open dining was still going on. and they got it, and then I guess it went through the team. So, I mean, this is the sad world we live in. And yeah, I was first, I'm trying to find the tweet. I think it was Elliot Friedman this morning that came out and said something. They may have updated the story now because I'm not seeing it in the link. But basically, they postponed it, I think, because, there was certainly some comments from JT Miller, that he was concerned about it. And I guess I just going through an article on Sportsnet, and they were basically saying, just to quote this, JT Miller expressed concern about the team's quick return to the ice Wednesday, said it would be very challenging and not very safe to play as scheduled on Friday because they had not had enough time to recover and get back in shape, end quote. So the point is, he didn't test positive, but he's saying he still isn't in game shape. So, like, I haven't heard any of this about Quinn Hughes. I think he was, I'll take your word that he was one of the players that was affected. There were a few that weren't affected. And, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, because I think the interesting thing that could be, and having been a Vancouver Canuck fan, first of all, it's, the main thing is everybody gets through this. That's the main thing. Secondly, they get back to play. There's two parts to this. I'm still miffed. And if anybody heard me on the Hockey Report at 5:15 on PCM, you can hear it on the Radio Player Canada app, by the way. There's a shameless plug. Anyways, the fact is, I still don't know how Vancouver, if you look at the schedule today, with all the games that they've missed, how, in whoever's name you want to believe in, does Montreal have only sorry, I'm just going to quickly go back to this. Montreal's played 40 games. Vancouver's played 37. How in God's name has there only a 3-game gap and Vancouver's been off for 3 weeks? It just shows there's been something wonky with that schedule that was made. And anybody that says that there might be a conspiracy against the Canucks, I'm sorry, but quacks like a duck and smells like a duck and looks like a duck. I think it's a duck. I mean, I just think whoever made the schedule really needs to get their head shake.
We've questioned the schedule for years. That's the problem, right? Like, I mean, I've always had, there's some years where it's just like you look at your schedule and you see a lot of weak teams, so you just like fist pump. Sometimes it's like you look at your schedule and you're like, man, why are we facing all the difficult teams, or why do we have to play these many games? And Montreal, the problem with Montreal, though, I think they had some COVID problems as well. So they did miss some games as well in Montreal. And Montreal didn't play as many games as well. I think they were a decent amount of the ways back, plus COVID stopped them up as well. But I mean, you're only, I guess from like Ottawa or Winnipeg or whatever, you're 7 games away, which is what Montreal once was as well. So I think like how me and Calvin were like, it's definitely a rough schedule. Everyone's playing a lot of games, especially the Edmonton Oilers. Like, we begin a lot of breaks now, but before we got a lot of these breaks, there was so many games. It was nuts. I'm still thinking about the amount of like OGRs, because I do Oilers reaction videos on every single Oilers game. I still can't believe sometimes I'm able to do every single Oilers game, because school is sometimes hell at some moments of time. And especially with how the schedule was this year, the schedule was insane. There was lots. Oh, yeah.
What I was just trying to say, and then you guys can run with it, and don't want to hog this. I'm just saying it. What it was Montreal had so many games in hand for, I don't know, almost since time zero at the beginning of the season. Yeah. And it took Vancouver being out, like whatever it was, 3 weeks or something. And then finally they got even in games played. And now Vancouver has games in hand. But it's just funny how the disproportionate, like at one point, Vancouver had played something like 6 more games than anybody else in the schedule, and that was in the division. And I'm just saying, like, there was something wonky there, but it is what it is. But as far as the COVID thing, yeah, it's been interesting, and it sounds like maybe, the squeaky wheel got the grease. Miller speaking up, maybe that did something, and good on him. And, so now we'll see because the Edmonton game is postponed. That came out late this morning, our time. And there might be something to Toronto, but as of the time of us recording here, there is nothing showing that game. They might just be waiting till tomorrow. I think it says in that Sportsnet story that there's going to be a revised schedule coming out from the NHL on Friday. So we'll just wait and see how
Yeah.
that. But that's my
Yeah,
take.
because I was hearing that the Edmonton Oilers game was going to be changed on Saturday against the Winnipeg Jets. Was going to be changed from 8 p.m. Mountain Time to 5 p.m. Mountain Time. So and that's the time slot where the Toronto Maple Leafs Vancouver Canucks will be happening. So I don't know if that game will be canceled or maybe it will be pushed back to 8 p.m. Mountain Time just to give the Canucks a bit more rest. But I don't know. We'll have to see what comes out tomorrow. You guys probably by the time you're listening to this podcast, the news will already probably be out. So go check your Twitter feeds and check out NHL to see if they came out with any revised schedule because I feel like Vancouver, I'm sorry, Mark, but I think Canucks, especially once they go back to play, like just talking about it physically and how, demanding it is, it sucks that they have to go and play right after, dealing with it because I talked with my buddy Kobe who had COVID, and he has trouble breathing at like some moments of times, and he's still exhausted, weeks after he had it, and he had a decent amount of a time with it. It was rough for him, but I can't like feeling for some of the like if Quinn Hughes had a bad strain of it or anyone else, it's gonna suck trying to go and play hockey again. So I feel for
Mhm.
the Vancouver people. I feel like it should be another week of rest just to kind of, get back into that game shape. But right now
Yeah.
the NHL is on a tight deadline for the playoffs.
Well, they're going to have to see whatever it is, what it is. That being said, I find it interesting, present company excluded. I mean, realistically, Vancouver's got a battle. They need to just simply stay 5 games wins ahead of Montreal
Yeah.
just to pull even. However, and I mean, mathematically is one thing, and in reality is another. But they are not out of this thing, but they have basically very small room for error. I mean, and that's where I find it interesting because I know there were people a few weeks ago even saying, "Oh, Vancouver's out of it. Vancouver's not doing anything. Vancouver's." That's probably the same reaction people said last year. I am on record as saying last year. Now I know it wasn't COVID going on and COVID affected, but I had a gut feel, and I actually predicted Vancouver beating St. Louis in round one. And I said in 6 games, and we had it right. So what I'm saying is I have a fairly good pulse on this team, and I just think they are going to surprise some people here. They may not make the playoffs, but the teams that are thinking they're going to just hit cruise control and rack up W's very easily now over this team, they don't know the character of this Vancouver team, and I think there's going to be some surprises happening. And that also goes for Vancouver. Can't take it lightly when they play Ottawa, assuming these games happen. Ottawa has been playing better, and Vancouver's been able to come out ahead, I think, in all the games. But Ottawa's, on the uptick, and I just think it's going to be interesting to see what happens here because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of teams that I think Vancouver is going to face that maybe except Winnipeg. Vancouver can't seem to do anything against Winnipeg, but any of the other teams I think are fair game for victories for Vancouver. But we'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, well, thank you for all the stuff there on Vancouver. It's been a weird time there in Vancouver, and we'll chime in there on Calvin. Chime in on your thoughts on the whole Vancouver situation.
Well, I mean, Mark hit most of it on the nose. Just the fact that there are still battling a lot of them with sickness due to COVID. And as I
Mm-hmm.
was saying off the top, I was just very fortunate that with my instance of getting COVID, I did actually test positive for a variant. It was the British variant, which is more contagious. But the Canucks are dealing with the Brazilian variant, which
Yeah.
is a lot more harsher for symptoms and it tends to make you feel a lot more ill. So that's where their issues are coming from, is that it just ballooned to basically the entire team, some coaching staff, and the fact that they were having to take IVs to these players' houses because they were so dehydrated from this
Mm-hmm.
virus and just from all losing a bunch of fluids due to sickness. It is crazy to think the NHL thought that within 2 weeks that they would be able to get the team back up and running. And so I think it's a good call that they're canceling this Friday game. It's definitely going to make this final stretch for Vancouver a lot more difficult because all I've been hearing here in the Calgary market, since we're trying to find that last playoff spot against Montreal, and Montreal had their COVID issues a few weeks ago, but it's made Montreal's final schedule a lot more condensed. They're playing a lot more games, a lot faster, not having much time to get that turnaround, and they're already dealing with injuries. Carey Price is injured in Montreal, and so that's their number one goalie. They're relying on Jake Allen, and they're playing games like all the time. And then I was listening to the Fan 960 here in Calgary, and they were saying they were breaking down the final schedules for most teams in the North Division, and apparently Calgary, just based on days off, who they're competing against, they have one of the easier schedules down this final month of games. And then, excuse me, I didn't even get into really talking about Vancouver. They were talking more about Montreal, Calgary, but it's going to be a tough go for Vancouver. And there's even talk about the North Division will have to go past when the playoffs start just to get their regular season wrapped up. And so that means we could see the first round of the playoffs for the other divisions be going on while the North is still finishing up. And then possibly eliminating games that are nothing games. Like if, say, Ottawa's out, they might take out the remaining games there. I don't know how the league would go around that, but I think it's just really getting out of hand here, and it's just causing a lot of issues for the league. And I'm surprised, honestly, that they're still trying to go through with what they're doing.
Yeah, it's surprising me too. I don't know what the NHL is exactly going to do, or if they're going to have to push the couple days for just the Canadian division. I don't know what they're going to do. I think they'll figure it out, though. They've done, I think, a fantastic job with dealing with all this COVID stuff. I mean, yeah, they've pushed the Vancouver Canucks a little bit because they're trying to push to that agenda that they want to hit, which is understandable. But I'm glad that they did postpone. I'm glad that the players did raise their voices up and told the NHL to piss off, because in the end that was the right thing to do. So we'll change up the topic to something a little different. As just a couple days ago, we had the trade deadline pass, which was one of the most boring trade deadlines I have ever seen. I went on Off the Wall Hockey's live stream doing the trade deadline thing, doing a little bit of his show there, talking hockey, and for a complete hour there was nothing going on. It was just dead. It was crickets all across. So we'll talk about the Calgary Flames up first and their trade deadline. We'll get Calvin's thoughts on that quickly. Honestly, I think they actually did very good this trade deadline. You know, they didn't make very many moves, but they did get Sam Bennett off their team, which is very nice, and they got a nice return. So I'll send it off to Calvin on his thoughts on the Calgary Flames deadline.
Yeah, so I do agree with you. The trades they did get off, I have no issue with either of them. Of course, I'm a little sad that David Riddick left. Like, he was quite the character for the Flames, but he's not going to lose that character. And it's already apparent that when he plays his first game with Toronto, you could see that, Riddick didn't change at all. The only thing that changed was the color of the jersey he was wearing. But that was before the trade deadline happened. I think that was the day before. So that was the Sunday night. So David Riddick gets traded to Toronto, and the Flames are able to get a third-round pick in 2022 from the Leafs. And I think the most ironic thing I found about that is how, well, the Flames' next game is against the Leafs. So what's going to happen there? And, of course, that was the whole pregame leading up to that Tuesday night matchup against the Leafs was David Riddick on Monday flew to Toronto on the Calgary Flames plane with all the Flames players, yet he was doing net for the Leafs. The Leafs were starting him against the Flames, which I found hilarious. And then to add to that, when you watch the game, you see like basically David Riddick's pads are still his Flames pads, but he taped up the front with blue tape. But you could still see that the back color of the pads is all red, and basically his helmet that he wore was just a carbon copy of what he's wearing for the Flames, but he changed it to Leafs colors and had the Leafs logo. So I found that hilarious. And of course, throughout the game, I think Tkachuk gave him a good spray, and he gave Tkachuk a nice little stick to the skate, and then gave Gaudreau a bump when he was skating to his net. I mean, I'm gonna miss David Riddick. I have a T-shirt that says "Big Save Dave," where it's got him doing the stick flip when we kicked the Oilers' butts. That was a big win last season against the Oilers, and it's sad to see Riddick go, but he was going to come off the Flames books at the end of the season, and it was very apparent that he wanted a better shot at being the number one. And with the Flames signing Markstrom to a 6-year deal, it was very apparent that he's not going to get that opportunity in Calgary. So the fact they were able to trade him off, get a draft pick instead of losing him for nothing is great. And they did retain half his salary, but of course he's a backup, so he wasn't making a whole lot of money. So it's not too big of a hit to take on the cap. It's good and it's only for the remainder of the season, so that's again not a bad thing. But moving on to the second trade of the deadline, as you were saying, is that Sam Bennett traded to Florida. The Florida Panthers, I honestly did not expect that team to be involved in a trade with the Flames for a million years. Like, I did not see that coming whatsoever, but I guess when Tree Living was taking offers on Bennett, that was the best he thought he could get, and it was the Florida Panthers. I guess they're making a playoff push, and they want that playoff Sam Bennett to show up for them and hopefully take them far, because I know the Panthers have been struggling as of late. They haven't been scrumming up too many wins. But yeah, so Sam Bennett goes to the Panthers and a 2022 6th-round pick. So, I mean, that usually doesn't amount to much, but I think it was just because Florida sent a prospect and a pick back to us, so they just wanted to kind of refill with a pick later in the draft, and then we get a prospect that Florida actually picked ahead of us in last year's draft, and apparently, so this is Emil Heineman, is the prospect we're getting from Florida, and apparently he was on the Flames' radar for the last draft, and it was just didn't work out that the Panthers picked ahead of the Flames and got him, but look where he is now. He's traded to the Calgary Flames, so we'll see him in our system for the next few years. And then we also picked up a 2nd-round pick in 2022, which for a Sam Bennett that's been underperforming lately and was a 4th overall pick in the whatever year draft it was. I'm so bad with my draft years. But, I mean, he hasn't really lived up to what he was supposed to be, thinking that Leon Draisaitl was taken just in front of him. And look how Draisaitl's turned out for the Oilers. And as my dad always says, he's like, could the Flames have not lost a couple extra games to get the 3rd overall pick instead? And so, yeah, but that goes to show, like, who knows? Even if the Flames picked 3rd, they still could have picked Bennett over Draisaitl. I doubt that, but who knows? So overall, those were good trades to make at the deadline. I thought the Flames were going to blow it up more than just a couple trades. I thought a lot was going to happen at the deadline, but I guess Tree was unable to find the deals he wanted and felt that going into the offseason he might be able to do a lot more. And another name that came up and was on a lot of people's trade radars but is staying put in Calgary till the end of the season is Derek Ryan. He's a really strong 4th-line center that is a real good depth player for any team trying to make a playoff push, and it just sounded like the market wasn't there for him, so that's why there wasn't any deal.
And he had a big salary too. That was an issue as well. Was the salary?
But then again, he plays for it. Like, he's not a
without a doubt.
He works hard for every game you see. Derek Ryan's always playing a hard game, even if he's not on the score sheet.
I would have enjoyed Derek Ryan in Edmonton. He would have been a perfect guy for that 3rd line.
And that was the talk too. There was talks about possibly him getting picked up in Edmonton and just to add the depth and hopefully make a strong.
I'm going to miss it big time because Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is out with an injury right now, and the way that Tippett's doing the lines, it seems like Draisaitl and McDavid will be on a line by themselves while Gaetan Haas is our 2nd-line centerman. So I am not excited to see that. I mean, it wasn't a bad line, but Gaetan Haas is no 2nd-line centerman. So I honestly liked what Calgary did. You know, they stocked up the shelves a little bit. You know, they have, bolstering up some picks next year. They know that this draft probably won't be too deep. And they know that it's going to be a pain to, draft because they've been just watching games on their little tablets or whatever, right? You haven't really been able to go to the arenas and actually scout those junior players. So they bolster up on another 2nd and another 3rd for next year, which is nice, and a nice prospect, which you guys don't have a lot of forward prospects, so that bolsters that up even more with Henneman coming to the team, which will be nice. So we'll jump on to the Edmonton Oilers, which they only made one deal to talk about, which I was kind of expecting that. I know a lot of Oilers fans are like, "Oh, we want Taylor Hall, we want this." It was like, I know we want a lot. We wanted to bolster this team up for maybe a playoff run, but the thing is, looking at the Oilers internally and looking at how the team played, we were never going to win the cup, even if we did go after Taylor Hall or even bolstered the team up. And I'm being honest about my team. I love my team to death, and I think this team could go to the Stanley Cup. But realistically, looking at it, defensively, we still have liabilities. We would have to legit, we would have to pull like something out of, of a video game. You'd have to trade Tyson Barrie and then trade him a bunch of picks for Taylor Hall or whatever. It wasn't going to happen for the Edmonton Oilers. So we picked up Dmitry Kulikov, which analytically, he looks great defensively. He's doing also great offensively as well. Now, he only has 2 points, but he's just been very unlucky offensively. He's kind of like a Pulley RV practically. But also the New Jersey Devils have been the worst team offensively this season. So also take that into account too. I think Dmitry Kulikov will be a, great top four defenseman for the team, especially to lower Darnell Nurse's minutes a little bit for the Oilers as well, because Darnell Nurse has been playing up to 26 to 25 minutes, and you can see the wear and tear that's been in on him. But we did acquire Dmitry Kulikov for only a 2022 conditional 4th-round pick, which the condition on it is if we win a playoff round in the Stanley Cup or in the Stanley Cup playoffs, it will be upgraded to a 2022 3rd-round pick. So we might lose another 3rd-round pick next year out of the deal, but I think it's a good deal anyways. Dmitry Kulikov will be a good defenseman for the team. And if we do win a playoff round, that's awesome. I would love to see the Oilers win another playoff round and have a little bit of, playoff success in this upcoming season, which I think Dmitry Kulikov will be helpful. But like I was saying, Nuge was also injured, so our forward depth is looking pretty bleak right now, especially without Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in the lineup right now. We don't have a lot of centermen to add to depth right now, just in general. Most of them are down there in Bakersfield, so hopefully we'll get to see some moves here sooner or later in the offseason. Hopefully we can see an upgrade. But the others, they didn't do too bad, but it was definitely disappointing not being able to see, a big-time forward to upgrade in that top 6 a little bit for the Edmonton Oilers. So we'll move on to the Vancouver Canucks. And I'll let Mark take this one because I don't know what Jim Bennon's doing, man, but a lot of people are calling for his head in Vancouver right now.
Yeah, you know what? I'm really undecided on this one. And the reason I say that in terms of him, well, first of all, the moves they made, Ben out to Winnipeg for a draft pick. They moved out Gaudette, which disappointed me a little bit. There's mixed reasons. I'm going to keep it on the hockey reasons because there's been some other reasons out there in terms of, saying that, I heard one unconfirmed report and very suspect report about, well, maybe it was something to do with because he may have been indirectly, the root cause of COVID or what have you. Well, nobody tries to, bring COVID into the thing. I don't think he did anything deliberate or anything like that. It's bad luck. So that being said, putting that aside, the moves he made, he shuffled a few players out, got it to Chicago. He brings a couple players back from Chicago, and I forget the exact sequence of moves, to be perfectly honest.
I think it was Matthew Highmore for Gaudette, and then you also guys got Bowie for a pick, and you guys got a pick back as well, and then Jordy Ben you traded away to Winnipeg for a 6th.
So I'm not sure. You can respond in a minute. Your comment about what he's doing. I mean, okay, maybe about not directly to the trade
and the
deadline.
Tanner Pearson extension as well.
He signed Pearson, and you know what? I haven't gone through and run all the numbers. There's going to be the haters that are out there that hate him, and clearly, I mean, I was looking back and sort of seeing, okay, for example, how long have we had GMs here in recent time? We've had. Going back to Brian Burke, he came in early '99. He lasted about 5 years. Dave Nonis didn't even last that when the ownership changed and it was half Orca Bay and half Aquilini's when it was a 50-50 split in the transition. Nonis was kind of given the boot unfairly, in my opinion, after I think it was about 3 years, including one of the labor shortage or labor shutdown seasons there. Then you had Gillis, and Gillis was here from 08 through 14. And sure, some could say he came in and he had, he didn't have to do a whole lot. And they came within one game of the cup. And then, whatever happened, he brings in Tortorella, signs him to a 5-year deal. Tortorella is gassed after 1 year after Gillis is gassed. And now you've got, the, whatever you want to call it, the Benning / Weisbrod / Linden here for a couple of years regime. And Linden's gone. And he's been here now. This is, I guess, coming up on 7 years. So he's one of the longer tenured GMs in Vancouver history, going back to Pat Quinn. Pat Quinn, I think, had a lot more success. I think they're trying to, Aquilini's have tried to be patient. They've tried to, because it was basically a rebuild. He does seem to be flip-flopping Benning from some of the narrative I've read about him saying, okay, well, now it's going to be, another year, or now it's going to be another 2, or whatever the case may be from what I'm gathering. You know what? I think we're going to have to wait and see how this all plays out. I mean, if somebody was a betting person, yeah, I would bet that Vancouver is not making the playoffs. What actually happens in that? And then they've got to figure out what they're doing with Travis Green. I don't know with that. As far as the trade deadline, I was not surprised. They actually did more than I thought they would, because Benning has a habit of holding on to people and then losing them. And I mean, sometimes that's good, but like you look at last year, without regurgitating this, Markstrom I figured would be gone. And no offense, Calvin, but that's going to look good on you guys on that 6-6, because I did not want Vancouver doing that for Markstrom. Nothing against Markstrom, but they've been there, done that with anchoring themselves with heavy contracts, if that's even good English. Tanev, maybe I wish they'd kept, but they let him go. They got some mileage out of him at the playoffs. Stetcher they let go, and that's just off the top of my head. The fact of the matter is I don't know where you were going with saying that what Benning's doing. I didn't expect him to do a hell of a lot more, pardon my French. I tip my hat that he was willing to move some players out, because, you figure, okay, get something back, and, you get a couple draft picks. The only one out of it is the Gaudette one, which
the Gaudette move and the Tanner Pearson one. I mean, the reason why a lot of people are like saying to fire him or whatever is because you guys have like so much money locked up in the top 9 depth, so much.
I know.
The list goes on, and he's focusing on signing Tanner Pearson because he has PTSD of losing Tyler Toffoli when Pettersson and Quinn Hughes are expiring here soon. And I bet a lot of money if, those contracts go to an RFA and Vancouver doesn't have the money to sign them, I feel like someone will definitely be handing those guys qualifying offers without a doubt.
Well, it's quite possible, but I think from everything that I've sort of read from, without, knowing exactly which sources off the top of my head, I think it'll be okay. I mean, they've signed Demko. I think it'll be okay, but I think clearly what needs to happen in Vancouver potentially is in the bigger picture is they need almost something like a Pittsburgh model, where you bring in a GM like Ron Hextall, who's been there, done that in at least one other scenario with Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, for example, the draft record there is, I believe you can attribute to Hextall, is Carter Hart. One that jumps to mind. You bring in somebody like a director of hockey, president of hockey, which is what you had in Vancouver with Linden. Now, whatever happened there, it was a mutual parting. That's how it goes on the books. And I'm not going to, play into, miswording, because as far as I know, it's been all hushed about, Linden was no longer with the team, and he kind of took the road that was like a mutual parting, and they've tried to seem to have that agreement. I think Benning is really bad, and this is fair comment, really bad with judging and signing players. Mm-hmm. Is Pearson one of them? Possibly, but Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, those are two that jump out. Antoine Roussel, maybe they're good players, but I mean, I don't blame the player. I mean, why wouldn't you grab, if let's just say you figured you were worth $3 million and they throw $5 million at you and they give you term, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to grab that money too. And then it's the person signing the checks or signing the contracts, and that's given that power, that is the one really to blame. So I think hopefully there's been some lessons learned there. I'm not too concerned that we're going to lose Pedersen or Hughes. Again, sure, in theory, anything's possible, but I just can't fathom them doing that. I have not run all the numbers. Maybe they figure they're going to be able to do some stuff with whatever expansion draft and lose some players and dump some salary. I don't know. I guess time will tell, because I'm not sure where they stand in terms of available space when it comes time to sign those guys. But yeah, I didn't think in terms of what they did at the trade deadline. At least they got rid of, for now, they're getting some assets back for. And then the Gaudette move, disappointing, but they figured that he wanted to be higher up in the, in the rankings, and it wasn't going to happen. And he didn't. Apparently, the record is they're saying that he didn't progress the way they wanted him to. So, who knows? He's gone, and I wish him the best. And like somebody said out there, he sure had the celebrations. And that's one thing that I just love, because there's been so many times that Vancouver hasn't had those type of players that are just really like into it. And he brought a certain energy, and it's disappointing, and now it'll be someone else to have to step up for that.
Which, I think that Matthew Highmore will do that. But the thing is, like, when I first looked at it, I'm like, well, Adam Gaudette's a really good, highly named player. Matthew Highmore, I don't know too much about. It could totally be an even deal. Analytically, it looks like a little bit of a downgrade from Adam Gaudette to Matthew Highmore. I would have kept Adam Gaudette because, things weren't going very well this year. And of course, you're not really going to see progression when, things are not going to go very well. It's going to be, a weird season for Vancouver cap wise. They got no money. They're on $85 million of cap. Of course, a lot of it is in LTIR, with, Fearland and Beagle right now. Being on the LTIR, and Erickson down there in the taxi card shaving off a little bit of money as well. But it's going to be, I don't know, man. The amount of left wingers you guys got, like, here's the money that you guys are spending on top nine forwards. And this is what I think are top nine forwards for the Vancouver Canucks. Brendan Sutter, $4.375 million. Anton Roussel, $3 million. We're already hitting $7 million. Then you add Tyler Mott. He's a really good depth piece for the team now. Jake Virtanen as well, 2.5 in him. Tanner Pearson, $3.75 million after this year, and then it goes down to about 3.25. And then you're still paying Fearland, and you're still paying Beagle, and you got Louis Eriksson. It's going to be a tight season, especially trying to sign Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. Unless you guys get those guys to cheap contracts, it's going to be tough to fit it underneath the cap for the Vancouver Canucks. I guess we're going to have to see what they do. They're going to have to make some deal with Seattle, or they're going to be ending up maybe potentially losing Pettersson or Hughes by a qualifying offer, which, I mean, we don't see very many of those, but especially with the talent of Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, I wouldn't doubt seeing those guys getting a qualifying offer. I'll send this one over to Kelvin on his thoughts. Do you think if, Pettersson and Quinn Hughes didn't get signed by the Vancouver Canucks and they got, qualifying offer, do you think they would go to some other team?
I mean, I think they like the culture in Vancouver. I think they like playing in Vancouver. So I think that would play into whether they want to leave or not. I can see Vancouver doing some good things in the offseason and improving a little bit. I mean, the one thing they did at the trade deadline that I kind of question as to, like, could they not get better was when they dealt away Jordy Ben for a 6th-round pick. I'm like, I mean, you knew he wasn't going to re-sign with the team after this season, and I think that was the main reason. They were just looking to get an asset in return instead of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think Jordy Ben was worth more than a 6th-round pick. Like, that's not going to amount to anything, really. It's a shot in the dark, basically. And they got rid of, a defenseman that, ideally, yeah, he's not the greatest defenseman on the Canucks line for sure, but he's a vet. He's been in the league a long time, and he'll help his new team out. But especially because that's why the Winnipeg Jets went and got him. They want more depth on their blue line, and they're adding to it. And because the Jets, I think, in my opinion, are probably going to win the North Division. Toronto's been really struggling lately, so that was a good ad for Winnipeg. But I think Vancouver could have done a lot more with Jordy Ben, and that's just my opinion on Vancouver's trade deadline.
Yeah, on Jordy Ben there, he's actually, I don't think, maybe could have got a fifth, but I think a sixth round pick is, good enough for Jordy Ben, especially looking at his analytics. He's so atrociously bad defensively. Winnipeg should have done a bit more instead of just picking up Jordy Ben, especially since they already have Forbert and Logan Stanley. They already have some big defensemen. Adding Jordy Ben's is like an insurance policy for them, basically just adding some extra depth into the squad to add some extra insurance there for the
And don't
team.
forget Neil Pionk having an outbreak season with
Oh,
Winnipeg. Like he's been
without
really
a doubt.
strong on the blue line for the Jets for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, Neil Pionk's been an MVP there in Winnipeg. I've been really impressed by the way that he's been playing, especially defensively. So we'll jump over to I guess another Canadian division team that we were just quickly talking about there is the Toronto Maple Leafs, who made a couple moves, really bolstering themselves up. Kyle Dubas making himself pretty busy, to say the least. Going out and making a lot of moves, picking up Riley Nash from the Columbus Blue Jackets, also Nick Foligno as well, and David Riddick and Ben Hutton, and also Somalia, which I think honestly they did great on this deadline day. I mean, yes, they did overpay, but when you're going for a cup, it only matters about your depth pickups, and they have a lot of former captains on the team. Especially they just added Nick Foligno, who will be another great leader for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And this is kind of like an experiment by what Cal Dubas is kind of doing. He's has a lot of leadership on this team that have been former captains, have been a former assistant captains, from Foligno to Thornton to Simmons to just about everyone on this team is somewhat of a leader throughout the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it's definitely a weird way that they built the team, but I don't mind it because, it's building up that depth and, giving that leadership to the younger guys like a Matthews, like a Marner, Nylander, helping those guys out possibly for a potential deep playoff run that they might be going into this year, especially since they might possibly just steamroll through the entire Canadian division. And now I know you're probably thinking, why am I talking so highly about the Toronto Maple Leafs? They've been struggling out of the late, and yes, they could totally just absolutely fail once they get to the playoffs as well. But what they did at the deadline, I think, improved their team. They definitely need to get that goaltending going. I was watching the game today against the Jets. Jack Campbell had a pretty rough game against the Jets. And David Riddick actually did really well once he got put in the net. But for that one shot where Nikolai Ehlers practically lifted Mitch Marner up and poked it right through the 5-hole of Riddick, which I thought was absolutely funny. But Calvin, Hector, I'll send it over to you on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, Leafs, like I was saying, have been struggling as of late, but they've had the injury bug hit them a little bit, and with all these deals they're making, especially making deals with teams in the U.S., they have to quarantine those players coming in.
Yeah.
So, like, Foligno hasn't made his debut with the team yet, and
No.
and that'll really affect the Toronto Maple Leafs, because one area they've really been struggling with lately is their power play. It's been
Yeah.
really, really, really weak, and I mean, you don't really know if that's a big factor with the fact that Austin Matthews has been injured. He's battling that wrist injury. He didn't actually play tonight against Winnipeg.
Yeah.
They sat him out, so I think they're just trying to rest him. But Toronto down the stretch is just going to be so deadly with their forward lines. Like, it's just going to be just waves of players that could really carry a line on their own. But look at, like, they're going to be really strong up front, and that's going to be really tough to deal with in the playoffs, especially if you're trying to grind a team down. It's like, well, you can only throw so much at them. Like, if your second line isn't going to match up to their second line, well, you're going to have an uphill battle no matter what when it comes to the playoffs, and especially when they got tough guys like Wayne Simmons and TJ Brody on the back end. He can get real feisty come playoff time, and then if they get Nylander healthy again, and that'll and same of course Freddie Anderson's hurt and they don't know whether he'll be back or when he'll be back. They're still questioning that injury with Freddie Anderson. I think that's why a main reason why they went to get Riddick, because he can carry a team for a few games and he had a winning record with Calgary. I forget exactly what the number was, but I think it was like 90 games played and he was like 60 and 30 or something like that. Like he had a winning record with the Flames. So as a backup, that's what you want for sure. And off the hot play that Jack Campbell's been doing right now, winning 11 straight starts, like that's crazy to get from your backup. So I think Toronto will be good down the stretch, and they definitely did a good job at the trade deadline. And that Kyle Dubas meme where he had two phones up to his ears at the same time resurfaced, and I laughed a bit at that. But that's true. Like Kyle Dubas was really busy, but I think he did really improve the Leafs, and they're all in for this season.
And also on the David Riddick, he was 63 and 39 with 15 overtime losses and a save percentage of 908, which is not terrible, and a 2.83. But the most of the reason why that save percentages went down and the save percentage and goals against has because of this year. He had a little bit of a rougher season this year. But his 2018-19 season was amazing. He was 27-9, 911 save percentage, and a 261. So he could be a very solid goalie, especially if the Toronto Maple Leafs play a very solid defensive game. And honestly, David Riddick hasn't been terrible. You know, he's just been normal David Riddick. We'll have to see how he does continuously. I was watching a bit of the game that he was put in against Winnipeg, and you know I thought he was pretty good, but for that one goal on Nikolai Ehlers where he should have just went down in the butterfly. But he thought Mitch Marner was going to be good and wasn't going to lose the puck like how he did to Nikolai Ehlers. But I'll send this one over to you, Mark. Do you have you been up to date on the Toronto stuff?
Not, to be perfectly honest, not a ton. I mean, I saw Riddick, the move there. I saw Foligno. I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, Riddick, I don't know enough about his body of work in terms of, I mean, I'm a little bit, to be perfectly honest, I'm a little bit out of the loop. I don't know. Where is Frederik Andersen right now?
He's injured there for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay, so they had to make the moves. I mean, credit to Dubas, however you say it, for getting sound like Don Cherry now, with his Sundin. It's Henrik Sundin. So fact is with the fact of the matter is, you can laugh anytime. The fact of the matter is I know it was weak. I think Toronto, I'm a little bit surprised that they've actually so far, and I'll put that clearly, so far, been able to, run up some numbers this year, because there's been so many years, and, I for the Toronto fans out there, sorry, gonna say it. How many times has Toronto, I mean, how many years didn't it happen twice? Or was it just the 1 year where we keep seeing it over and over again, where they were up in a series clinching game against Boston and they blew it in the third
years.
Everything so far this season in the North Division, in terms of the only thing that hasn't turned out so far is Vancouver is in the bottom three, Toronto's in the top four. I had it flipped around because I just think Vancouver really bleeped the bed coming out of the gate, and Toronto did well. I mean, Vancouver had Toronto's number, if you recall. They played two really good games before they had their pause, and that wasn't even because of COVID. That was just the break they were going to have in the season there. So I think Toronto still has some things to prove, because they've got, they've gone all in on a lot of players prior to the season. I mean, they've tried to add some different character, and credit to them. The question's going to be, to quote John Tortorella, maybe it was years ago, on who's the guy there? Is it Thornton that came from San Jose? Joe Thornton better keep his mouth, his yap shut, because he's won nothing in this league. And the fact of the matter is, it's kind of like, it's still going to be interesting to prove. I mean, Toronto would completely, they haven't mathematically locked things up, but they would completely have to collapse to fall out of fourth. It's out of the top four. It's not going to happen. I just don't see it happening. So they're in the playoffs, with 99.8% certainty until they've locked it up. And it's going to be interesting to see, because whoever they play, I guess, in the first round, it's going to be 1 against 4. So right now it would be either Montreal or it could be Calgary or it could be Vancouver mathematically, assuming the standings stay as they are right now. And, it's going to be interesting to see because right now, for example, how much playoff experience does Toronto have?
Lots now.
Well,
Lots now with Joe Thornton and Simmons and Nick Foligno just being added.
I'm talking about as a team. How many series have they won?
Oh, they haven't won anything since like 2004, I think. I think that was the last time they won a playoff series.
They may collectively have some experience there, but that certainly has weight. But they've done nothing as a team, and that's going to be what it comes down to: is will they be able to come together and win as a team? So they made some moves. They needed to do it. I figured Anderson was injured, but I missed that. So they've added, some goaltending depth, and it'll be interesting to see if how this all plays out, because then they'll have to do some relooking. I mean, if they don't do anything much in the playoffs this year, they may get a pass because it's this COVID weird division year or whatever. But I think the clock is ticking on that management team there as well. I mean, Dubas, etc. So we'll see how that goes. But good on them for adding some depth, certainly.
Yeah, without a doubt. Calvin, go ahead.
I was just going to say we haven't really talked much about Riley Nash getting moved to the Leafs, and he's kind of my guy because he's a former Salmon Arm Silverback, so I just thought I'd mention that. But he's been on a few different teams. He came into the league with the Carolina Hurricanes, and then
he was drafted by my Oilers, baby. Woo!
And then I'm just looking at his hockey DB, saying how he was Carolina, and then he went to Boston for a couple seasons, and then of course he's been most recently with Columbus Blue Jackets before being included in that Foligno deal. So now he's with the Maple Leafs, and we'll see how many games he gets put in. I think he's more just added in there for depth. So if there is an injury, he can easily be inserted into the lineup. But I definitely think he'll probably slot in as in the third or fourth line if he does get any playing time with the Leafs. But I think he's more just a good ad.
Riley Nash, he was just part of a different deal with Columbus. He was just traded for like a 7th round pick that he was traded for. He was part of a different deal. He wasn't part of that Nick Foligno deal.
Oh, okay. I thought it was included in that.
Yeah, it was 2 separate deals. I think the Nick Foligno deal was like a day after the Riley Nash deal. They did like one deal picking him up, and then they threw Riley Nash straight on the LTIR to open up some more cap space. And then that's when they went after Nick Foligno and picked him up and got him retained to like 1.3. That went actually through 2 teams. Columbus, I think, retained a little bit of it. And then also the San Jose Sharks retained a little bit of it, of that contract as well, which we've seen a lot of those types of deals where, one team retained it a little bit and then got sent over to that team. I think it was I think that's how it worked. And in the end, I mean, it's great work by the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think what other team did it as well? Why am I losing my thought on that one? Oh, the Tampa Bay Lightning also did it with picking up David Savard as well. But as we get near the end of the episode here for the PCM Hockey Podcast, episode 10, it was a lot of good hockey talk between the Flames, the Oilers, and the Canucks, as all of our teams were sort of busy during this very quiet deadline. And we're excited to see how the rest of the NHL will size up and how the ending of the year will be. It's exciting. We got some exciting hockey to come towards. It should be a fun race for the North Division. The Calgary Flames are slowly creeping their way back into that North Division as well. So that should be pretty exciting. And hopefully some Oilers hockey. I'm missing my Oilers hockey. I'm dying for it. I haven't seen it very much. I've missed it. I haven't seen the game since last Saturday, and it's driving me nuts, man. Anyways, Calvin, we'll head off on the final thoughts, and we'll start off with Calvin on his final thoughts.
Well, to start, I mean, it's nice to see the Flames inching up closer in the standings, kind of waking up a little bit. And as I said, I was surprised they didn't blow up the team at the trade deadline, but I guess they believe they still have a chance, and Montreal's been struggling, so it's definitely going to come down to the wire. I mean, the Flames, they're not even must wins. They can't lose, and that's what I've heard through the hockey talk on the Fan 960, and I couldn't have said that better myself. Just they can't afford to lose another handful of games, and so hopefully Jacob Markstrom has seemed to have been playing really strong as of late. So hopefully that carries through the rest of the season, and the team has looked like they've been playing as more of a team. So hopefully that continues on, and hopefully the Flames can make the playoffs, because I'd be pretty sad if we make this push and then just get a middle of the pack draft pick, because that seems to be the Flames love doing that. So I'd rather make the playoffs. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
And Mark, your final thoughts there, buddy?
Yeah, just looking at it, I mean, the standings again, I mean, Vancouver as of tonight has 6 games in hand on Calgary. And 4 of the games that Vancouver still has to play out of the remaining 19 are against Calgary. So that, in theory, is, I mean, now again, because in the old days where you just knew a game was worth 2 points max, now you have these 3-point potential games. So trying to do all the potential scenarios is like a very headache-inducing algebraic equation. I mean, and I'm pretty good with math. The fact of the matter is Vancouver, I mean, from a Calgary standpoint, yeah, I mean, they're 4 points out of the playoffs right now, and Montreal has the games in hand on them. Vancouver has got very little room for margin for error, and I mean, it would be miraculous if they somehow were able to, and I mean, again, it's not mathematically out of the question. It's not necessarily a long shot, but it's certainly going to be a tough feat for them to make the playoffs from Vancouver. But it can be done, and certainly they've got to overtake Calgary to get there. And like I say, there's potentially 8. Well, depending on how it plays out, 8 to 12 points on the table there between the two teams when Vancouver plays Calgary. So it's going to be interesting, and yeah, it'd just be nice. My main concern, as I've said all through this, I just want to see the Canucks come out of this as healthy as you can after having COVID. And there probably will be some players that are out longer, and they'll have to maybe dig into their farm team or what have you. And here's one to pour salt in the wounds of those that hate what happened with the Toffoli deal. Hindsight, wouldn't Tyler Madden look good in a Canucks uniform right now? I guess
when he looked.
Gonna love life in LA, but you know what? That's hindsight, and what's done is done. And just to add to your comment earlier, yeah, I don't know what Benning's thinking. If he's thinking he can do a make good by, he lost to Foley and now keep Pearson. You're not comparing apples with apples in terms of the caliber of player, at least based on the body of work. But it'll be interesting to see. And yes, you're suffering no hockey, Payton. Yeah, try it here in Vancouver, where it's been something like a 1-week pause due to the bye. Schedule's turned into, I think, like 3 weeks or something. So definitely,
I wouldn't even want to think of that. It sucks, and I hope the Canucks players are all doing good and they recover greatly.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining me once again for another episode. It was a good episode. We'll try to do these weekly. Most likely, it usually never goes that way, some way or another. But I'm going to be done school here very, very soon, so that means more time to do more of this and do more podcasts. So I'm pretty sure we'll start cranking out these podcasts, especially when playoff hockey comes around, which should be exciting. We're only a couple weeks away. I think we're about a month away from playoff hockey, almost officially. I think the last day of games for the North Division, at least, is I think the 16th is what they got planned. Now, that might be pushed back as a cancellations, but it is around a month away from playoff hockey. So, hockey fans, be excited, be ready. We got some excited hockey ahead of us. But thank you guys for tuning into another episode of the PCM Hockey Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys all later. Have a good one, boys. Adios, amigos.